Welcome to another edition of Brews Cruise. I am your host, Chris Jacobson, and tonight I have a buddy of mine who actually I have just met maybe, I would say 3-4 months ago. Yeah. Tyler Weber is on the podcast tonight, and we have an interesting episode that we are going to go over tonight. But Tyler, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, not a problem. Now, you requested some... what was it? Mezcal. And so I found, we did some research a couple nights ago on what you were kind of hoping for, and I found Casamigos Mezcal. And I actually did a little research on what Mezcal is all about.
Yeah.
Do you know what it's about?
Yeah, it's basically it's tequila, but it derives from anywhere outside of Jalisco. So, and you can use any agave plant, not just the Blue Weber agave. So, yeah, but there's a lot more mezcal out there than actual tequila.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's got more. It's made a little bit different. It's got that smokiness to it.
Take a smell.
Smells like a campfire.
I'm not a huge tequila fan, but it smells fantastic. Now,
tastes like a campfire in your
really?
mouth. That's what I always say.
Perfect. Now, you said you like this on the rocks.
Yeah.
So I got us some ice made up. So if you want us, we can grab some ice here, and you can move your mic. Don't worry about that. All right. It's all pretty relaxed here. Grab as much ice as you want out. Grab as much as tequila you want out. Now, I found it funny because you said exactly what I had researched was, and folks, I got an iPad here now, so well, I'm going to fact check myself. But you were talking just a moment ago about the mezcal, and you talked about the Weber agave. Now, it's not because your last name's Weber, is it?
It's not. Maybe that's why I like tequila so much. But
yes. So how do you? What's kind of funny is your buddy with Marcus Teachout, who has also been on, and he requested tequila as well.
He did.
However, funny thing is, for those who actually watch on YouTube, you'll notice the bottle is also like a matte black finish. And so was Teach's. So I don't know if it's the guys at Northland Breaks or not, what they like to drink.
That must be why me and Teach clicked so early, man. I don't know. Teach is probably my first buddy I met out here since I moved to Minnesota. So
yeah, now you got a whole new group of guys, which is
that's how I met Chris. Yeah,
and Josh, who's also been on the podcast. Now, the one thing I'm noticing about this, when I saw you pour it, it's just clear.
Yeah, normally it's got not normally, but some of them got a little bit of like that reposado añejo color to it, that yellow.
Sure.
That yellow color, So this one, it does look clear. Tastes the same. Tastes great, actually.
Is there a favorite brand that you have of mezcal, or it just that's the style you like?
That's just the style I've been really liking lately. Honestly, I have not memorized any of the names of the mezcal I've really drank. Usually I get them when I go out to nicer restaurants or bars or stuff like that, and I don't even remember what they are. Or going out to Mexico, it's like I'm just trying so many different ones. I don't even know which one's which, but mezcal's grown on me a lot. Love tequila. Now the mezcal's the next step. I don't know.
So mezcal's a step up from
to me. It is
to
me as far as taste goes and like the complexity of it.
Yep.
Like you can make a lot of people a lot of bars are starting to make drinks with them now, and they just every single one. If there's a drink with a mezcal in it, I'm trying it because I just like it. I don't know.
Well, this is pretty good. Like you said, it does have a smoky flavor to it. Threw me off because to me, besides when I was talking with Teach, the tequilas I usually have are like, oh my gosh, it just tastes like death. And it's Patron. And it's Patron that usually is that. And people think, oh, Patron, that's the one you got to get. No, that's
not the case.
That's terrible compared to this stuff.
Yeah.
This is way different. And I wasn't expecting clear. I was expecting a yellow color for some reason.
I think I was too. I couldn't tell through the bottle, but
murdered out.
Yes, murdered out bottle. But yeah, no, this is good. And I tried the Cristalino tequila from Casamigos the other day, and it's obviously clear. It's Cristalino, but and that was really good too. Never had the Casamigos mezcal, but this is pretty solid.
Yeah, when you do try, do you normally try it on the rocks only, or do you mix it with things too?
I never mix it. I'm not a big mixer.
Okay.
When I went to Mexico a year ago, I went to this tequila tasting bar, but they also had just bottles you can't get anywhere else.
Sure.
And the dude basically was like, so you know how to taste tequila, right? And I was like, I think, I don't know.
What did you think it was before?
Well, before, I was like,
Drink it?
what? Well, you just drink it, you take a shot and just taste it,
Sure.
and don't take a chaser or don't have a back with it and just taste the notes. But he was like, no. He's like, you hold it in your mouth.
Okay.
You want to hold it in your mouth for a few seconds. Some people swish it around even. He's like, and it brings out more flavor than like abundance of more flavors apparently. And I tried it and he was right.
So that's what we should be doing.
So
right now.
yeah, I guess we should give a little hold in the mouth.
Well, first of all, hold on. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm gonna try the swishing around. It definitely brought out another flavor.
Yeah,
That was more of a sweet flavor for me.
Yeah, brought like a little bit of a fruit at the end for me, but you still got that smoky. It's hard to get past that smoky flavor, but
Ooh, now I got the smoky flavor big time on that.
yeah.
It's way after it. Okay, so this is about a $65 bottle is what it costs. At least for me, it was.
It's not bad at all.
No, and I was saying this on another podcast. Some people said like $100 bottles are kind of an entry point. I'm like, I don't know what entry point you guys are at, but I'm.
This is our entry point.
This is not entry point. This is top of the line. I'm only giving this to the people I like. 80 proof, so it's 40% alcohol. Mezcal, artisanal, 100% agave, espadín.
Does that have like a country or no?
I don't know. You tell me.
Providence.
Yeah, I think it does. You might know more than me.
Oaxaca.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like super south Mexico, like right damn near down to like Central America, like getting into like Costa Rica and stuff.
Oh,
like
really?
that. So it's way down there.
Okay. So
Yeah,
all the way up here in Minnesota.
So that's
now.
the thing. Yeah, you could. I mean, it says espadín agave.
Holy cow.
Agave espadín.
When you swish it, it does bring out a whole different flavor. I swished it, and
Let's try the hold
yeah, try that.
or the swish.
Now, the one, I think you told me this, and we've only actually met, well, you moved here,
wow.
what, in January?
Let's do that. Yeah, right at the beginning of the year. Yeah.
Right in the beginning of the year. And we met, probably March, I want to say.
I would probably say March. Yeah.
Yep. And you've been working at Northland Breaks as well with Teach.
Right.
So you guys, he was like one of your first guy buddies here in town, and then
Yeah, pretty much Ty Sticks and then Marcus. Yeah, first two guys I met. They actually flew me out here in November, for Thanksgiving, because I was living out in Washington on the West Coast, and my family's on the West Coast, but they're in California, and they're like, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? And I was like, normally I don't really do much. I had a girlfriend at the time, and normally I just spent it with her, but she was going to be out of town or something, so I was like, yeah, if you want to fly me out, like I'll come out, meet the guys, and see if it's something I would want to do and move out here and commit full time to. So yeah, came out in November. By January, I was driving across the country here.
So how did you meet up with those guys anyways? Because we're all from Minnesota. Ty is a local guy here in Winona.
Yeah.
Marcus is not so local, but now local due to college. How'd you ever hook up with those guys?
So I started during COVID, actually. A lot of people did. They started getting into the trading cards. Back in the trading cards, they got their stimulus, they got all that stuff going.
Sure.
They're just like, what can I blow some money on? And
Yeah.
I was in the same boat, and so I started getting back into it a little bit, and then I started realizing, all these cards I had when I was a kid, man, like I'd be balling. I'd be balling right now if I still had these and was taking care of them when I was younger and stuff like that. And so I started to get back into it and kind of knew the game, was familiar with it. And but then the more research you do, you learn a little bit about it. And I just went head first, just went this deep into it.
Sure.
And then I found out about the breaks, the card breaks, and basically one of the first breakers I met was Ty.
Okay.
And when Ty was it was literally the first month he started doing it was when I met him, and it was just the right time, right place, all that kind of stuff. And I just liked him. I was like, this guy is cool. I feel like if we were to hang out, we'd be friends, And I'm like, all right, I like this guy. And so I supported him through the growing pains in the early stages. Back when they were running breaks all night long, him and his son Blake, and they were just doing it every single night, no matter making a profit, no matter making a loss. And I respected that because I knew, because I was thinking about it myself. I was like, I know I could do this.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the capital for it. And once, when you get into it, you really realize how much money it costs to kind of run that type of business. And Ty was just doing it, whether it was getting breaking even, really. It was breaking even or taking a loss at the beginning for him. And I was just like, I just want to come in and hang out with this guy. I'm just going to buy stuff from this guy because I like him.
Yep.
And he emailed me one day and was just like, hey, man, like, you seem like a really cool guy based off just, talking through the chat and stuff. Like, have you ever considered breaking? And I was like, I have considered it. I actually wanted to do it on my own, but I look, after realizing how much all this product costs, it's not something I could do without an investor or anything like that. And so he's like, hey, let me give you a call tomorrow. Let's chat. He's like, I'd really like to bring you on the team. And he's like, you'd be the first breaker I ever hired. And I was like, all right, well, so I'll talk to you tomorrow. And he gave me a call. We talked for like an hour on the phone. And I could just tell right away, Ty's is a really good guy. And he's someone I would want to meet, someone I want to hang out with, just like I thought. And he basically was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna send you a package. And this is his exact words too. He goes, I'm gonna send you a package. He's like, I'm not gonna send anything crazy right away. He's like, but this is probably gonna be a couple $1,000s worth of product I'm sending you.
That sounds crazy to me.
Exactly. To a complete stranger, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
we've talked for a couple months at that point, and I've been supporting him for a couple months, but he was like, yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna, and if I never hear from you again, he's like, I'm gonna send a hitman out to kill you. And I was like, I don't even know if this guy's serious or not. But
man.
I was like, but I'm not gonna, I knew I wasn't gonna mess with him. I had sincere intentions, and so, yeah, sure enough, 3-4 days later, package shows up at my door. And I call him. I'm like, got the package. I sent him a video of me opening and everything, make sure he knows, like nothing was taken out,
Yeah.
everything's good. And he goes, all right, cool. Can you break tonight? And I was like, let's go.
So you're doing this from Washington?
I was doing this from Washington, from my condo.
Okay.
And yeah, he like literally soon, like I got the package, and within 30 minutes, he's like, all right, you ready to break?
I don't know.
And I had never done it, and I was like,
Yeah.
I know I could do it. I was nervous, but I was like, sure, like I know that's what you want. You need another guy to do it. Let's do it. And the first night went insanely well, and I remember calling him in the morning. I was like, so how'd I do, man? Like, I felt like I did pretty good. And he goes, dude, whatever you did last night, keep doing that. He's like, that was crazy. He's like, you had the best night we've ever had, pretty much. And I was like, I had no idea. But then that boosted my confidence, and then it just from there, every week I get a package, and then it got to the point where he had me breaking so much. He was like, dude, I have to send you a package like every 3 days just so you don't run out of product, because you're doing really good and I don't want you to run out of product. And that's when he was like, okay. He's like, this is becoming expensive just on the shipping part of it. He's like, everything's gonna flow much easier, be way more streamlined if you were to able to be out here with me. And I saw the potential with what we're doing, and weighed the pros and cons. At the time, I was managing a weed farm, had a pretty good gig. Like nothing was wrong with it. It was middle of the road, like decent living, but I always wanted more for myself. So I was like, this is something that could take off. This is something that I believe in, and Ty's the guy to do it with.
Sure.
After talking to him and especially after flying out on Thanksgiving and meeting him and his family and seeing the morals and the values and everything that he has here, I was like, I think it's the right choice. And you talk to the people close to you about it, and pretty much every single person I talked to about it, they're like, I think you should do it. What do you got to lose? And so, and that's where my head was at too. And so, I just had turned 30, and I was like, it's a turning point. Let's just go for it. And so, make a big boy move, come out here and see how it goes. And so far, so good. The weed farm is great, and loved the business, loved the industry and all that stuff. But, it wasn't, I wasn't the owner of the business. So, as far as, your ceiling on what you can make, it was capped. And with this, it's kind of not.
Okay. Well, I like that. Yeah. I mean, you can go, sky's the limit, I guess. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
so he would ship you product and you would do it from your cell phone?
Yeah, so I would do it on my cell phone. He'd give me his login information. I'd just log in on my cell phone. It would send him a little, is this, your phone or your account, or do you know this person logging into your account? And then he would have to send me a code.
Sure.
And then I'd have to put in the code. And, sometimes I'd be breaking really late and we'd talk earlier in the day. And he's like, all right, just break tonight at this time. But then I'm on the West Coast. So I'd get home from my 9 to 5, late, like 7 or 8 o'clock, and then it's like 10 or 11 out here.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'd be asleep. And then I'm like, dude, I need the code.
Wake up, I need your code.
I'm like, dude, I need your code. And like, I'd have to call him a couple of times, and I'd send him text messages, and all of a sudden he'd finally call me back, and I could hear he was asleep, and he's just like, oh yeah, I got the code. Send it to you right now. And yeah, but that's how that worked. And so I would just do it from the West Coast. And the idea was, he's in the Midwest, so he's 2 hours ahead, and so he could break all day long, and then I can break from the West Coast and get more hours in for that day, because he's not going to stay up till 11. He's got his own, several other businesses.
Yes,
So it's like, yes, he does. So he's like, he needed someone to be able to run that late night, and that's when I started. And I started doing the late night stuff, breaking the hobbies, breaking the bigger products. Whatever reason, that's just how it goes. The later it gets, the more money's spent, the more people are available. People got their day jobs. So during the day, sometimes it's not quite as lucrative. But
I would say at nighttime. Right? What time? Yeah, the way I always see is like 8 o'clock at night. Seems like there's about 30 people on.
Yeah, as soon as it hits about 7 to 8, like 7:30.
Yep.
I mean, even when I just got off work a little bit ago breaking, and it was 7 when I ended, and we had like 20 viewers in, and it was climbing. But like before that, all day you're teetering around 13, 14, at least on the Loop platform. We've done other platforms and stuff like that where we've gotten up to like 70 or 80 viewers. But
really,
yeah, like there was a whole weird thing with Whatnot when we were on Whatnot, and we still to this day don't know what happened. They actually reached out to us a month ago asking us, hey, will you guys want to break on Whatnot? And we're like, what do you mean? It's like, you guys told us you didn't want us anymore, pretty much. They didn't. We never got a message like that. But one day, I went to go log into the stream, started the stream, and all of a sudden this big old black notification comes up, says your account does not exist, or account is banned, or something like that. And and I called Ty, and he goes, yep, we just got banned. And I'm like, how? What did we do? I was like, and none of us knew. None of us, still to this day, we don't know why. They never gave us, his wife, Lindsay, sent a very professional email out and asked him, this is actually affecting, and this is right around Christmas time too.
Oh man, people are spending.
Yeah, and that, but not only that. And she was like, well, some of the people we have breaking, like they're relying on this kind of income for their families and to have a good Christmas and stuff like that, which, may or not be true. I don't know. I mean, I don't have kids right now. So for me, I was like, whatever, that was my extra income at the time. And I was like, that sucks. We were doing good. And I was upset about it. But the main thing was Ty had talked about me moving out there already. And so we're like, all right, well, where do we lie now? But yeah, it was the weirdest thing. Still couldn't tell you why. But the fact that they reached out to us after we've been on different platforms for a while now kind of speaks volumes about, Ty and like the whole Northland Breaks crew. Cause it's like, they obviously see what we're doing and see we're getting numbers and we're getting a good following, which we were on Whatnot.
Sure.
We were growing at a rapid speed, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I know you can report people for pretty much anything. I don't know if it was a number of reports from just outsiders or other streams or what, but we still to this day don't know. And when I started working for Ty, I think we had, because on Whatnot you have you have followers, just like a normal social media.
Okay.
So, you know, like on Loop, you go on, like, it doesn't tell you anything. You see the name of the stream and you click on whatever one you want.
Sure. Yep.
On Whatnot, it'll show you, you know, like these people got 20,000 followers. These people got 100,000 followers. And, you know, normally you're going to gravitate towards the bigger following because, like, there's a reason for that, right? Yeah. So it's even harder to gain a following when you're the low man on the totem pole and, you know, get your name out there. And so that was one of the things, is like, we had gained such a big following in such a short period of time, and you just don't see that. And I think when I started breaking, we had 500 followers, and within a month and a half, we were up to like 3K. And that amount of growth you just didn't see anywhere else. And I don't know if it intimidated other breakers or something like that, but I mean, we'd constantly, you know, it tells you as soon as they pop in the room who's joining, and you'd see other breakers' names down there, but they'd never say anything, they never bid, and it's like, why are they checking up on us? Like, you know, like, why are they checking up on the little guys like that?
Sure.
And so, in my mind, I was like, I feel like they had something to do with it, whether it was reporting or for whatever reason, I don't know. But as far as we know, we didn't break any rules. We weren't doing anything wrong. The most I could think of is maybe we played a little bit too explicit of music. But
oh man, well, you guys do. You guys play requests
from time to time, yeah. But you know, like, never had an issue on Loop. And when you're on Whatnot, they have an option when you're creating your show, explicit content.
Oh,
so
okay.
If you're gonna be, you know, cursing or playing different, like, and I actually heard from someone else that you're not actually supposed to play music on Whatnot anymore, but for copyright. So maybe that could be something. I'm like, everyone plays music, like every single breaker.
I feel like they would say that in their email though to you.
Right. You would think they would say something about that. Yep. So we were always in the dark about it and never knew what the issue was, and still to this day we don't. But the fact that they've reached out literally within the past month, asking us to come break for them again, is just hilarious, because it's like, and then I think Ty responded and said something like, oh yeah, you know, like, we had sent you an email a while ago and never heard back, and they're just like, oh yeah, we never received that, blah 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 blah. And it's like, they never knew we were banned. So I mean, Whatnot's
too big of a company then.
Yeah, Whatnot's it's one of the biggest breaking platforms right now. So they probably didn't know that, and then they just reached out because they saw that our social media following's getting up there, and you know, we were doing good on their platform, but we were succeeding elsewhere as well. So that's been pretty cool, actually.
For those who are listening right now, we're talking about Northland Breaks. If you remember Marcus Teachout's episode, Northland, what they do is they basically, you buy into a team and they rip the cards open from the package, and then you get whatever cards come out for that team. Now, we did the wheel on here one time, if you remember, with Marcus. When you were on Whatnot, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Were you guys doing the wheel then too?
We were doing the wheel, and I mean, to be honest, that's where we learned the wheel from.
Oh, okay.
That's what the big breakers were doing at the time. Everyone had the wheel out. The big time names, everyone was running the wheel, and it's the most fun way to do it, really. I mean,
it is. It's essentially, in my mind, it's fun gambling, because I'm like, I hope I hit the team I want, or whatever team has the big guy in it.
Exactly. You know, and then sometimes you get stuck with the team that you don't want, but then sometimes that's the team that gets all the big money cards. And so yeah, basically what it is you put a bunch of product out there. It could be any sport, any type of trading card game there is. People do it. Ours just happens to be NFL for the most part. We do baseball and basketball as well, and you know, Pokemon and stuff like that. But other people, you can do it with anything. But you make a wheel, and you just start an auction at $1. Most people do. That's what we do. And you know, sometimes people get lucky, and there's no one in the room, and you get $1. You get $1 spin, and you hit the Texans. You hit the Texans in an NFL break. You get a nice CJ Stroud card that's worth $100 for $1.
Sure.
But then there's also the chance, you know, you hit the Commanders, and you know,
I've been there.
Yeah, it's like, you know, they're not sought after until next season when the new products come out. So it's like your chances of getting something worth your money's is lower, obviously. If you spend $1 and get them, it's like whatever. It's like whatever. I lost $1. Don't expect anything anyways.
Yeah, right. I mean, you don't get much for $1 these days anyways.
Yeah, right. So if it's just time of day. It's just that's what's fun about it is you can tune in at any time of day, get some good value, hope for the best, and it is kind of a gamble at this.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff's a gamble, and they try to stray away from the gambling term, but I mean it is what that's what it is. It's gambling with something to take home. Like you're not going to come up empty-handed at least, but
yeah,
usually.
I suppose you could.
Usually, it is possible. I've seen it happen sometimes, but at least for us, we at least try to help those guys out and give them something that they, at least give them something that they paid money for, which not a lot of other places do, which could be in part why we, have retained the customer base we've had, but it's just you bid on an auction, you see all the teams left on the wheel, you just spin the wheel, it's getting smaller and smaller every time.
Yep.
You land on a team, whatever products out there, whatever cards come out for that team, you're taking home. You're getting it shipped to you, and so you could potentially spend $20, come away with a card that's worth $1,000, or you could spend $20, $40, $100, and not get anything but $5 worth of cards.
Right,
so,
yeah.
But there's that chance that you hit big, and that's what everyone is essentially addicted to. It's very addicting.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot of fun, and the community in itself is what creates more fun out of it, I think. Especially when you got a good room and a good group of guys. Everyone comes in, they just joke around, they bullshit a little bit, and
I'm one of them.
Exactly, and that's the fun part of the fun.
So I got a question then. Going back off of you guys came from Whatnot, did you see any of those customers or followers follow you over to Loop then? Like, I know some of the big names out there because I see them and we're always bantering within the chat. But did some of those people come over to Loop then and say, hey, we were following you on Whatnot and we don't know what happened, but we're here now? Or?
Yeah, so there were quite a few, and that was a great feeling actually. And even when people noticed when we weren't on for a week or two, and they're like, they would find us on social media without ever following us. A couple reached out to me personally, and they're like, dude, like, where you guys been? Like, what's going on? And at first we didn't know what was going on. So, and Ty happened to be camping and something. So we're like, hey, Ty's on a camping trip or a hunting trip or something like that. Like, we're just going to be MIA for a week or two. But we didn't know how serious it was. And then all of a sudden we're like, yeah, we're never going to be able to get back on there, apparently.
Yep.
And so we started researching, where else to go. But after we finally got on Loop, people found us. A couple people found us. People that were just in every single day, and they're just like, dude, like, we didn't know you're on Loop. Like, we don't really use that app that much, but we saw that you were promoted, or we saw you on Facebook or Instagram and stuff like that, and wanted to come say what's up, and just support you guys again, and it's good to see you guys and all that stuff. And there's actually this one guy, I don't mind shouting him out because he's got such a big following already, but he was in our breaks pretty much every single night on Whatnot. His name's I think his name's Daniel Vasquez.
Okay.
And I think his handle's like Latin Heat on Instagram, and he's got a big following. And like, the dude doesn't need to do anything for anybody. He doesn't like he I already thought he was a stand-up guy, but he's a young kid. He's got a huge following. Does advertisements, promotions for a lot of big name companies like Happy Dad and stuff like that.
Really?
He's in it. And
what's his name? Latin Heat?
Latin Heat, yeah.
I love it.
And on Whatnot, his name was Latino Heat, but he made an account on Loop just to come say hi. He's just like, dude, he's like, I miss you guys. Like, I'm glad to see you guys are doing good and, back breaking and stuff. And he's like, anything I could do to support you guys, just, let me know. And like, he'll just pop in from time to time and just say, like, dude, how are you doing, man? Like, 'cause he remembers me, he remembers Ty, he remembers the original guys, and which Teach was one of the original guys too. I think Teach was probably the next breaker after me, and he started doing the mornings. But yeah, Latin he's one of the guys that really like made us feel good that like we were doing the right thing. 'Cause I mean, there's no reason for him to like go build a whole profile to go say hi on a different app that he doesn't even use. So, and the dude's got, like I said, a good following. There's this other guy. His name was Dylan. I actually became pretty good friends with him from Whatnot. Kind of lost touch with him lately since we started using a different app. But I honestly think he just stopped getting into breaks because we were gone.
Sure.
But his hand or his username was Dill Pickle, and he's another guy. He's another guy that made an account just on Loop just to come say hi. Like, he doesn't really hang out long, but he'll come in. He's like, dude, how are you doing, man? Like, I just been so busy with work. Like, just good to hear from you. And then, you know, that's it. But that feels good, you know, and obviously you're doing something right when people are following you to a whole new platform that I didn't even know existed. None of us did when we were on Whatnot. None of us knew what Loop was, but we had to find something. So, and that's where we're at now. And I mean, it's doing well. It's doing well. I wouldn't say the ceiling's as high as Whatnot is, but I mean, it's a newer app, and it's mostly iOS friendly. So you're kind of limited on what you can do with the app unless you have an Apple device. I mean, you could still get on with Android or a PC and stuff like that. But from what I hear, it's much more user friendly on an Apple device.
So how is your time now? You've been here for roughly 7 months.
Yeah.
How are you liking Minnesota from Washington? And now you're not actually originally from Washington. You're from...
No, I'm from California.
You're from California.
Yeah. So I grew up in Sacramento. So
that's a little different.
So I mean, it's kind of weird. So it's like California is substantially different than Washington, but there's similarities. But then from Washington to out here, even more substantial differences. And I wouldn't say they're bad or good. There's just pros and cons to both.
Sure.
There's less to do here from what I'm used to.
In Winona,
less to do.
Yeah.
But the quality of people you meet out here, I swear, just with morals and just mean what they say and genuine people is just tenfold out here. Like, it's just
in Minnesota.
In Minnesota, it's just so much different because when you're out in especially in California, I swear, like, I mean, I grew up there, so I had my good core group of friends, like all you guys probably do out here, and you kind of stick with that. You don't really stray off from that because no one's interested in meeting you anyways. Everyone's, I mean, it's a lot of different variables, but it's like people are so busy or so caught up in their own thing just to make ends meet almost, because it's just the cost of living out there is crazy. And that's one of the main reasons I moved to Washington, because I was working in the weed business since I was that was like my first big career besides working at a water company and doing UPS and stuff like that. And so I got the opportunity and I just jumped on it because it became legal in California right when I turned 21. So I was just like, I'm going to just jump on this industry right now because I know it's going to blow up.
Sure.
And it has, and it's spreading throughout the states. But yeah, it just California is it's a weird place. If you're looking to like meet new friends, and it's tough. It's tough to meet new people out there. People don't even look you in the eyes. People don't. They don't. It's almost like they don't really listen to even what you're saying. It's like they're thinking about what they're gonna say before you even say it. And like you can just tell. I mean, I feel like most people can tell that when you're having a conversation with somebody and they're just not even listening to you. They're just like, I know what I'm gonna say, and then I'm just trying to get out of here type thing. And then you go to Washington, and when I went to Washington to start managing the farm out there, it was better. More people seem to be a little bit more receptive and hold conversations a little bit more, and you could meet some people. Like I met some of my best friends out there, to be honest. Like currently, some of my current best friends were from there. But there's also still that effect of people just being busy and not really wanting to stray out of their groups and stuff like that. And There wasn't so much of it though. So I enjoyed the time in Washington where I was at. I was in Spokane, Washington, and it's one of the bigger cities in Washington, but it's obvious, it's the opposite side of Seattle. So you got Seattle on the west side, you got Spokane on the far east side.
Okay.
And my dad was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, so that's why I moved there and thought it was a good idea to go out there because I'd be closer to him. But Spokane's just, I mean, if you ever watch Cops, like 1990 Cops, damn near every single police stolen car chase is in Spokane. I'm not even kidding. When I moved there, they had like the record for the most stolen vehicles in the U.S.
I hope you kept your vehicle.
I mean, I did.
Okay, good.
I did, but I knew plenty of people that got their stuff broken into or just windows busted, robbed cars, and just high crime rate, high homeless rate. Wasn't I mean, so is Seattle. I mean, Washington's one of those states where they kind of, when I don't want to say condone, but they kind of do. And it's just the politics there wasn't up my alley and that kind of thing. And it also just kind of seemed like a place you kind of get stuck at. And a lot of people even that grew up there, they would tell me like, if you don't want to be here, make sure you don't stay here too long, because if you do, you're going to be stuck here. And if you do stay here too long and you go somewhere else, everyone always comes back. And I'm like, well, I don't see myself here. So I was thinking, I mean, at the time, my mom still lives in California. And so at the time I was like, you know, I'm either probably going to go back to California soon or something. And then all of a sudden the card thing sprung on me. And I was like, you know, let's go to Minnesota. I lived in Iowa for a year growing up because my dad got pretty much a different position. It was a promotion, but it was his dream promotion pretty much, but they only had a spot open in Iowa.
What town was
in Des Moines. That was
Des Moines.
It was in Des Moines, yeah. And I mean, I didn't mind it. It was totally different, but like I said though, the people that you meet, they actually are interested in you. Yep. They're actually interested in meeting you. They don't, you know, like, oh, where are you from? Not just like, oh yeah, you're from there, blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't care about you. Like we made friends with all of our neighbors immediately, which we were neighbors with these people for 20 years growing up and maybe knew 2 of them.
Sure.
So it's like, it's just that difference was, I liked that part of it. And I remembered that. And so I just remember, I'm like, you know what? Moving out to the Midwest at 30, meeting a whole new group of people doesn't seem as difficult to me going out to the Midwest as it would be from the Midwest out to the West Coast. So, and I mean, and some people don't care about that stuff, but to me, you know, like I like to go out and do stuff with a group of people. I like to have fun, you know, and that it's important. It's important to have a good group around you, to me, and have met nothing but good people out here, as opposed to, you know, the West Coast. I feel like there's a lot of fakes. There's a lot of people who pretend to be your friends. A lot of people that use you for certain things that you have. You just see it all over the place. Yeah. And some people might be blind to it, but I mean.
Well, we've enjoyed having you here.
Yeah, and I appreciate it.
I mean, we got our little group message, and you know what's actually very impressive. What you do is you will message just out of the blue. What's anybody doing today? And if we're not doing something, we usually get together. But if we are, you know, it is what it is. But just like on Sunday, a couple days ago, you're like, what's everyone doing today? You guys want to get supper, go somewhere? Sure. And then Josh is like, hey, I got brats. I'll make those for us.
Right. And those were phenomenal.
Like, cool, let's do that. And then we just all met at my house, and we had 3-4 hours just hanging out. And I'm like, that is fun to me.
It's super cool. It's super cool to have a group that you can do that with, because, you know, some people don't have that. And I mean, I kind of grew up with that. And then as my core group that I grew up in California, as we got older, and like I said, I swear it's because just the cost of living and the competitiveness to just, I don't know, have some sort of status out there is just praised so much that, I mean, we got together maybe once a year if we're lucky. Oh, damn. And just trying to get the whole group together at one time was damn near impossible. Yeah. And so it just got to the point like, why am I still here? Yeah. Like if I'm here because I got my guys, but why am I still here if we can't even all get together? Like, why is it so hard? And so it is nice that it's a little bit slower paced out here, and you know, like you can just send a group text out and, you know, let's get together, do something.
Yep.
That's something I've always liked to do. And so, you know, if I'm not doing anything, I'm gonna see what's up. If you know, I don't like just sitting at home doing nothing, or if I'm, you know, there's always something to do. But on the weekend, you know, if you don't got any plans, you got the group chat going, and just shoot out a message. And the fact that, you know, like you said, like you got, like, at least you get responses. Like there was a time where I was, you know, it's like you just don't even get a response. Okay, like I know not all of you guys are busy. Like,
well, I know everyone checks their cell phone.
Yeah,
I know
right.
well,
Like I know most people are on their
about
cell
once
phone
an hour.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, I'll check. I get updates on my screen time, and it's like you're on your phone 13 hours this week, and I'm like, that's insane.
You've definitely seen your messages at some point.
Right.
That week.
So it's like, yeah, I mean, you get like that one friend that'll tell you like, oh yeah, I'm busy, but then everyone else is just like, oh yep, I'm busy, but I'm not going to tell you. And it's like, I know, like, I don't care, man. Like,
just say it.
Just tell me you're
Just say
busy.
it.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But
So a question for you then. I may even have the answer ready, but what's your one pro and your one con about now living in Winona, Minnesota? Do you have something that stands out in your mind, like, man, this is amazing, or man, this sucks? And here's the one thing while you're thinking about that.
yeah.
Our weather this summer is probably more like Washington's at the moment. And last year probably would have been more like California because we hardly had any rain.
That's what I heard.
And every day this year, it seems like there's a possible storm coming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like Washington's weather, if not California's. Because tomorrow, sunny. The next 2 days after that says possible storm. So it's like, oh, man. So I was just wondering if there's any, like, since you've been here for 7 months, is there a one pro and one con that comes off the top of your head at all?
Yeah, so I mean that's a good point too with the weather, but I mean as far as the con, still to me it's just, it's not true everywhere in Minnesota, because I've been seeing this girl out in the cities, and like there's a lot more to do out in the cities. Like,
oh yeah,
it's more what I'm used to.
Sure.
So I have a good time every time I go out there, and like there's numerous restaurants you could try and stuff like that. Here in Winona, not what I'm used to.
Pretty limited.
Not what I'm very limited. Yep. I'm eating the same stuff all the time, hitting the same stores all the time, seeing the same people all the time, which is cool. And it's different for me. So I like that. And you can build a good community base with that. Like you start to get to know everybody, and I really like that. But at the same time, the con is there's just not a lot of options of what you can go do or explore. And, you know, the city's like a couple-hour drive from here, so I mean, which isn't crazy. In California, I used to drive to work from Vallejo to Oakland, where my first weed business was, and I think it was like 18 miles, 22 miles, something like that. Nothing crazy. It would take me 2 hours to get to work every day, and then 2 hours to get home, maybe even longer to get home.
That sounds
and
miserable.
So I mean, I was working 4 hours for free basically every day, just driving, sitting, and I'm not talking just. You know, going 5 miles per hour. You're going, you just stop and go.
That's so
People
annoying.
are slamming on their brakes. You got motorcycles weaving in and out of traffic. You got like, it's just, it was brutal.
I lived in Atlanta, so I know what that's like, dude. Going down 275. Gosh, just to go 10 miles took me almost an hour sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So 20 miles, about 2 hours. Like, and I was just like, it got to and at first, I remember my boss at the time, he's like, you sure you're okay doing this commute, man? And I'm like, dude, I like driving. Like, it's not a problem. But then it just became too much. After a couple of years, I was like,
it wasn't even driving. It was just sitting in traffic.
Yeah, it was just like I like driving. I don't like being on high alert after working all day, trying to make sure I don't rear end somebody.
No kidding.
And trying to find an alternate path, because all of a sudden there's an accident and you're going to be sitting in traffic like that for 3 hours. And so it's like, it got to the point where I was like, is this actually worth it? And then I had the opportunity to move to Washington. So that's what brought me there. And it really was the traffic and then the cost of living in California that kind of strayed me away out of there. Cause I was making decent money, and like what I thought was good money, and what people here would say is really, really good money.
Yeah.
But out there I was,
just the living
not even middle class. I don't even think. I think they said a few years ago, I saw a statistic saying like if you live in the Bay Area, just anywhere really, To be considered middle class, you have to be making like 110,000 a year just to be middle class.
Be living high here.
Yeah, exactly. So
110 here, man, gets you a lot more.
And then I went out to Washington, and when I moved there, cost of living was dirt cheap, and I was like, oh, I love this.
Yeah.
But then it kind of followed suit with California a few years later.
Sure.
And so after being out there for a few years, it was right back up to kind of where I was at before, and I was making still good money, but I was like, all right, well, it's starting to become not even cool to be here, and I don't even like it that much here.
Yeah.
And like you said with the weather, I do like the weather here compared to Washington because
Really?
even you say like there's storms the other day right now in the summer in Washington, you're lucky if you get 2 sunny days in a week.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Like,
well, I'm talking more about the snow portion. I
didn't get to really experience that part yet.
Not yet.
So, I mean, I saw a little bit of it, and everyone's like, oh, you came at a good year because it was a very mild winter. And I'm like,
Actually, the year went by very fast because of how mild it was.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, what was it, like February and March? We had like almost 70-degree weather. It was amazing. I didn't even get to go snowboarding once this year.
Wow.
And even my buddy who normally goes, I go with him, he went, I think, twice, and one of his times only half the slope was open because they only made snow for so much of it. So
I would like to get a season pass.
Dude, whoever got a season pass this year got screwed.
Yeah,
big time.
I'm gonna get a little refund.
The one positive thing I will say is the traffic. Like, you can do so many more things here in a day.
Yes.
There might not be as much to do because I know I lived in Atlanta, so I lived in a big city for 2 years. I had to like plan my day out. I'm like, if I want to do something, I got to do. Okay, I gotta be here at this time. I gotta be there at that time.
Because at this time, it's a no-go. Yeah.
And like tonight, like you just went to work. You literally went home for a little bit, came here. You're doing a podcast. I mean, we could do anything you wanted with. You could do like 5 things in a day here.
For sure.
Yeah. And that's one thing I will say is a very big pro for me.
Yeah,
it may not be as much to do, but I don't know, man. You've been fitting in well with us here. We love having you here, actually. I'm glad.
It seems like the guys I grew up with. It's like it's effortless. You got to be yourself, and it's just like you guys are all very similar, and it's cool to see like there's similar people across the U.S. that you would never necessarily meet. Yeah,
just gotta find them.
So, and that's always the fear, right? It's like, oh, well, everyone's this way or everyone's this way on a certain part of even the world, and it's like, it's just not the case. Yep. So, we got that dark humor, and it's everywhere.
Well, they call us Minnesota nice for a reason, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've heard that term a couple of times, but.
All right, now, so you said that you lived in Washington and then you were managing a marijuana farm.
Yeah, so...
That's something that I've never had anybody on the podcast doing. So I want you... Can you discuss about that kind of stuff? Because just as of last August, marijuana is now legal in Minnesota up to like 2 ounces, I think I read.
Right. And actually, what's funny is when I met Ty... on our initial discussion on the phone call, he was talking to me. He's like, well, he found out what I did for my day job because he didn't know. And I told him, he's like, dude, he's like, no way. He's like, that's going to be a thing in Minnesota here pretty soon. And I was like, I heard that it got legalized. And honestly, I mean, that's another ambition of mine is to do something like that out here because it's just going to start getting bigger everywhere. And hopefully it becomes, federally legal. There's pros and cons to that part of it too. But yeah, I was a sales rep for an edible company in California. And I kind of saw the business side of it first and saw how everything worked and saw, really just learned how to make. I wasn't making the edibles. I was a sales rep, but I was in the facility all the time. And I knew, we're buying this product from up in Humboldt and we're getting it for this price and we're making edibles and we're yielding this much edibles for sale out of it. And just learning that side of it, the business side of it. And it got me really interested. And I'm like, this is a very lucrative business if you do it right. Mm-hmm. And then I had the opportunity. Well, one of the, I guess you would call it my boss. She was like an assistant dispatch manager type thing. So like she would just kind of call my clients that I was going to go see that day and like kind of help me sell before I even got there type
Okay.
deal. She's kind of like, oh, what are you guys low on, blah, 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 so we know what to bring, and he's going to be here this time, this day, or she would just kind of plan my schedule for me pretty much. So it made my life really easy. But her and her boyfriend, he was a grower at this dispensary in San Jose. At the time, it was called Airfield. I think it was called Airfield, something like that. All I know, it was like airport themed, and it was actually a pretty cool dispensary. But he was the master grower there, and so he was going to go start his own thing out in Oregon. And so she's like, oh, if you ever want to come out and learn how to grow, or just the processing and the harvesting, stuff like that, come up and check us out. And I thought about it, and then she actually told me that there was a lot of openings in Washington as well for like a lot of smaller farms opening in Washington that we're going to need help and stuff like that. And I moved out to Washington, and I actually didn't even have a job in the industry when I moved out there initially. I just knew that there was gonna be openings, and my dad was close by. We hadn't seen each other in years, and so I thought, maybe it's a good idea to go out there and be closer to my dad. But at the time, I had finished my certification for personal training, so I just got a job at a gym, started doing personal training, and then I finally got an interview to work for this farm that I called Inflorescence in Spokane, Washington, and I got hired as a trimmer. So I was doing personal training, and then I would go trim weed for
Really?
for
What does that
6 hours.
What is
So trimming weed, I mean, so
it's like trimming a tree?
no,
Okay.
no.
It's
I
different.
mean,
All right,
a small, very like a miniature tree, pretty much.
Okay.
So basically, when you harvest the plant, there's a lot of steps that go into it. But
Sure.
I mean, you cut they're little mini trees. They're like little. It's like a Christmas tree that's like a baby, and you cut it down, and you got all these branches, right? And so you cut the branches off to where you can hang them, because it's wet. It's just a wet live plant at that time, and you got to dry it out for 10 to 12 days or whatever your system is. And get the buds to be where they're like, and some people do it different. Some people do what they call wet trim, where you cut it down and you just trim right away. I don't like that, because if you've ever felt weed, it's sticky, and when it's wet, it's even more so sticky. So you're like you'll have gloves on, your hands are like super glued together. Like
Really?
yeah, like it's
They
very
always
difficult.
call it the sticky icky.
Yeah, so it's
That
difficult
must
to
be
work.
why.
It's much more difficult to work with when it's wet. You got all the resin, and it just
Okay.
feels like your hands are super glued together. And so for me, if you want a good looking bud or whatever, so like people all on the West Coast, they're all about the bud appearance, and you don't want too much of like the water leaves and the fan leaves on it and stuff like that, which are the longer leaves that poke out when you see like a the normal marijuana leaf. Like, you don't want any of that on your bud. I mean, those are taken off while you're in the growing stage.
Sure.
Just to weed them out. But like, you don't want to see dark leaf on your bud. You want that bright green, the orange tint, the purple, like the cool looking colors, and like just I mean, to me, I worked in the industry so long, like there's buds that just look pretty to me. Like,
Okay.
just like that is a
Okay.
beautiful looking bud, and it just looks good. And size is a big thing. Like, people just want nice, big, dense nugs rather than tiny little pebbles. You know?
Sure,
what I mean?
sure. Well, for those who are listening right now, I just pulled up here just so we're all on the same page here. This is just cityofwoodbury.minnesota.gov. It says, in the spring of 2023, the Minnesota legislature legalized decriminalized the use of cannabis in Minnesota, effective on August 1st of 2023. People ages 21 and up now can possess up to 2 ounces of cannabis and consume cannabis without legal penalty. Cities have additional rules guiding where it can be consumed and sold. So for those who are wondering, it is kind of a state-to-state thing.
Yes.
It is legal up to a certain point here in Minnesota, so don't think we're talking about anything illegal. But I think, if I remember right, California was like the first state ever, I think this is a trivia question, to legalize marijuana.
For medicinal, I believe.
Yes, medicinal.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know Washington, Colorado, and maybe Oregon were the first. I'm not 100% sure, but they were the first ones to recreationally legalize it. I know Colorado and Washington were one of the first ones. California kind of followed behind a little bit, but I think California was one of the first medical ones, because I remember as a kid going down to Venice Beach with my mom and my dad, and just every block has a medical dispensary, and like out in California at the time, they don't have signs. It would be a marijuana leaf and then the address. But you couldn't have like a name. It would just be like, you could have a name online, but you couldn't have like a advertising. You couldn't advertise it on the street front.
Well, just looking it up, you're right. You were right. 1996, California became the first state to enact medical marijuana.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you're right. In the next 4 years, Oregon, Alaska, Washington, Maine, Hawaii, Nevada, and Colorado followed suit. Colorado became the first state to legalize recreational in what year? I'm just trivia.
Oh, man, I want to say like 2009?
2014.
Okay.
I just wanted to trivia.
Yeah,
just give me a little trivia pursuit.
I wasn't sure. I mean, I knew it was in the 2000s, but yeah, Colorado. See, like, and it is a state-to-state thing. Everyone's got their own rules and regulations. Yep. Like, for instance, you can go. I still don't know if it's like this in California because I haven't been there in a while. But when I was there, and I had my medical card. Got it when I was 18. I was like, you can get it for anything.
So they would just give you a medical card?
Yeah, you just go see a doctor, and there's a list of ailments, like a list of 50 different things. And you just check whatever ones apply to you, and you talk to a doctor, and they're like, okay, yeah, you can get a prescription for marijuana.
I definitely have a question about that because I don't understand this that well. I've never done weeds or marijuana, so I don't know it that well. What is the difference between medical and recreational then?
Okay, so
like I want to say what I think it is first.
Okay, no, that's good.
I want you to correct me because it's what it is. Medical, they're going to give it to you in almost like a prescription formula, whereas you take this much, like you went to like Walgreens to get a prescription. Where recreational is you're rolling up a joint and you're smoking it, and that you just do it as much as you please.
So pretty wrong.
See, but that's why I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Discussing this.
But it is another state-to-state thing. But for the basis of it is medical was first, right? So when you got your medical card, you call it the medical card, because you get like this laminated card if you want it and pay extra for it, or you can just bring in your paper that the doctor signs every single time, and it's a pain in the ass to carry. You can just get the card for like an extra $10 or something.
Sure.
But that's why they call it a medical card. You get that, and then you have access. They'll let you into the medical dispensaries, and I only know it in medical because of when I was in California. But what would happen there is you show up to this medical dispensary. Again, at the time when it was medical, there's no names on the front of the buildings. It's just the address, a marijuana leaf, and that's your icon to let you know that you're at the right place.
Okay.
And if there's barred windows, barred doors, security out front, you're definitely at the right place. Mm-hmm. So basically, you walk up. You got to have your ID ready and your medical card or reference, whatever you want to call it. You give it to the security guard. He'll take it into your secretary lady or office lady or whatever. They'll scan it, run your medical card number, make sure it's legit, not fake or whatever. And then they have you sit in this room. And they only allow like so many people back into the actual dispensary at a time to prevent, probably robberies and stuff like that, and just kind of make sure everything's flowing correctly and legal. It's not like that everywhere, but in California, that's how it was. And so you go in, when it was medical, you go in there, they'll ask you, the bud tender's job, what they call them bud tenders, not bartenders. They call them bud tenders.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's literally.
I go to the brewery, they're called beer tenders. You go to a bar, they go to bartenders.
So that's literally their job title is bud tender. And their job they were much more, truthfully, they were much more helpful when it was only medical. But then when it became recreational, and you got the recreational shops, because some shops are recreational and medicinal, some are just recreational, some are only medicinal, as the states became like both or whatever. But when it was medicinal, you go in there, everyone was super friendly, and they actually, you know, they'll just want to hear, you know, like, what are you looking for? What kind of effects are you looking for? And they'll point you in the right direction and show you, like, this is what you want. It'll give you that feeling you're looking for. It's not going to make you feel like you're freaking out or whatever, which I don't like that. I'm like the kind of guy that likes it to mellow me out and help me go to bed, stuff like that. But which is what you would call, like, usually would be an indica plant. And then you got the sativas where it's like, you know, outdoors type stuff, get your vision all vivid, kind of get you laughing. That's the stuff that gets you laughing a lot.
Sativa,
okay. Yeah. But that's,
and then indica makes you calm down.
Indica makes you calm down, makes you kind of just chill out, gives you that body euphoria, kind of like feeling like someone's giving you a massage or something like that. That's just always, I found myself to like those more, but truthfully, and then you got hybrids, right? So hybrids are like combined, and there's different percentages, like 60% sativa, 40%. Like they started getting crazy with it after a while, which, you know, people like it. But what I noticed with the sativas, like strong sativas, like 100% sativas, is it would give me that like side effect of anxiety and like paranoia after a while. Like I'd feel really good and happy for a while, but then once it kind of started to wear off a little bit, I'd get real paranoid and like just I just didn't like that feeling. And so, and then I started just smoking indicas, and I was like, never had that issue. Get great sleep, best sleep ever. Gets my appetite up, because I'm not truthfully not that big of an eater. And then, you know, someone who tries to work out and you got to get your macros in and stuff like that. It's like I got to force feed myself, and truthfully, the indica weed is what helped me just shovel it down. And
get the munchies.
That's called indica is where you get the munchies from. So when you hear munchies, sativa usually, I mean, all weeds might give you a little bit of an appetite, but for the most part, it's the indica plant that's going to give you more of that feeling. But as far as the medical thing, they would ask you, and then, you know, you buy whatever they suggest, or if you don't trust them, just get whatever you want. But you can get whatever you want still. It's not like, oh yeah, you're only allowed to get this type for your ailment. It's like you could still go in and get whatever you want. But in California, at the time, they would weigh it out in front of you. You could smell it. You could do everything but touch it. But they'd pull the jar out. They'd let you smell it. They'd let you look at it. They'd, you know, show it to you under a microscope, and then they'll weigh it out on the scale in front of you. When I moved to Washington, completely different. Granted, most of the shops were recreational only, but they're all prepackaged. So you don't get to see it weighed out. You don't get to smell it. All you can do is look at it and see the name, and see like the strain or the strand, whatever people call it. And so
you really had to know what you were looking for.
I mean, if you're someone who's knowledgeable about the strains and like the history of weed, you kind of know like which ones are going to do what effects to you, which I was pretty knowledgeable about that. So it wasn't a huge deal to me. But at the same time, there's times I got bamboozled. I'm like, this looks really, really good, and I'm going to buy that because it looks good. And then I open the bag and it smells like hay, and it tastes like shit, and it didn't have the effects that I was expecting. And it just, like, that was the gamble with it in Washington. I didn't like that part. I know if you go into Oregon, same thing. They'll bring the jars out to you. They'll let you smell it. They'll weigh it out in front of you. I'm not so sure about Colorado exactly. And again, like it is state to state thing. But all I know is in California, when I was younger and it was only medicinal, they would take care of you that way and make sure, you know, you liked the smell of it, you liked the look of it, you knew what you were getting. Recreational, they're just kind of like, we got this in a bag. Got this in a bag. It's this. We got these price points. We got these price points. What do you want to spend? That's what they ask you. When you walk in, what do you want to spend? I'm like,
ooh, that's not good. That's the first thing they ask you.
Exactly. And so, I mean, and anyone who's knowledgeable, you're gonna be like, well, I want the best bang for my buck. I'm not gonna overspend on something that's not worth it.
Right.
So all the guys that I worked with at the weed farm, we all we're in agreement. Like, I never buy top shelf stuff in Washington because you never know what you're gonna get.
Sure.
I'm gonna buy that mid shelf that looks good, and so if it's really good, I'm gonna be just stoked.
Yep.
Because you paid you didn't pay a premium for it, and you pretty much got a bonus. Like, it just happened to be good. Even you can even get away with some of the low shelf, as they call it, stuff. There's like the low, the mids, and then the top shelf.
Yep.
And so it just varies on price point, and a lot of times based on look. And so sometimes some of the stuff that looks like shit is some of the best stuff, but you never know unless you can smell it. You can look at it under a microscope, see the trichomes, which is like the little, which is what makes it sticky. The trichomes is what makes it sticky, and that's what THC is the percentage of THC affects how high you get, quote unquote,
Okay.
And so the crystals, which is a THC, a trichome is basically like a little clear crystal on the plant. And when you look at it under a microscope, you can see how many crystals on it much easier, obviously, to the naked eye. But stuff that's like, what they call that fire, that gas, like you could.
Well, you guys say the same thing in breaking cards. Now I'm confused.
That's where it comes from, dude.
Oh,
that's literally where it came from. I brought that in. I was like,
you're the originator of
no one
this.
was saying that until I started saying that.
Teach, you're being called out. That gas and
he doesn't even
fire
know what
was
he's
not
talking
from
about,
you.
But yeah,
He's
gas,
really
like
talking
gas is
about.
from like that smell.
Okay.
Because it's like, oh, that's gas. That smells gas, dude. Like,
Okay.
It smells like gasoline because it's so strong.
Mm-hmm.
And then, fire is like just really good weed. And so, fire, really good cards, fire.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
But the trichomes, if you got really good weed, you could see those trichomes without a microscope.
Okay.
And when you touch that bud, you're going to take your hands off and stick your fingers together, and you're going to be like,
Sticky.
yeah,
like
that's
glue?
good.
Okay.
Like you could tell that's got some trichomes on it. And so that's what you're looking for when you're buying weed, but without being able to touch it, it's hard. But generally a really good smelling plant is a good, baseline of knowing if it's good or not, because if you harvest too late or too early, it's going to have a funky smell to it. It's going to smell kind of weird, or it's going to just smell like I said, hay or grass, or just like plants. But you want that like with alcohol, you get those notes of certain fruits or just anything really. Mm-hmm. And if you can smell that on your weed, it's a good sign that it's a healthy plant. It was harvested at the right time. The THC is probably high quality because it all correlates together. So, that's where the fire and gas comes from. But
that's great to know that now.
Yeah,
I'll be listening.
I didn't know a lot of people didn't know that. That's funny.
No, I mean, well, like I said, I've never done marijuana, so I don't know anything about it. Now that actually brings me to I got a couple of questions now. But first one I have is, you managed a marijuana farm.
Yes.
What was like your day to day? What were you doing then on that portion? Like you weren't growing it. You were right.
Well, I mean, so I mean, we were a smaller scale farm, so everyone kind of had their hand in a little bit of everything.
Sure.
My position as far as managing the farm was more business oriented. So I was kind of in charge of creating the orders for these stores who are buying from us, right? So. That was my main duty, was communicating with the stores, making sure that people were getting what they wanted. If we were out of because I mean, it's a hard business. Like you harvest the crop, right? And then I was telling you about trimming. So we didn't even really finish talking about the trimming. So like you harvest a plant and you got all this leaf on it, but people don't want ugly looking buds with a bunch of leaf on it, and it adds weight. So when you're weighing out and you're paying for, say, an ounce of weed, that's 28 grams is an ounce.
Oh, okay.
So if you're paying for an ounce of weed and then it's got this excess leaf on it, you're paying for leaf.
Sure. Okay.
So you want it trimmed down to literally just the bud, because then I'm getting the most bang for my buck. I'm not getting any excess leaf. I'm getting all stuff I can smoke. I mean, people still smoke leaf because it does have some trichomes on it, but it's going to be very harsh. It's not going to taste good. And that's what creates like the non-smooth smoke and all that stuff like that.
Okay.
So people that actually are like weed connoisseurs, they want just no extra leaf on it. I just want bud, and that's it. And so our expertise, I guess, which a lot of people weren't doing, was fine trimming it. And a lot of people will use machines to trim it. You throw a pound of weed in this machine, and it just rotates around with these blades, and it just kind of knocks off all the leaf. But it kind of gets it down to like, I don't know what we would call it. We would say the bud has no character. It doesn't look natural. It looks like it was machine trimmed. It looks like it's shaved. And what I mean by shaved is, so what you do when you trim weed is what we did when you dry trim. So you harvest the plant, you cut all the different stalks off, and you hang it, and you dry it for a week or two, usually 2 weeks, to be safe. And you make sure it's dry, make sure there's no mold growing on it, because it's wet. So you gotta have perfect conditions, which you want the good humidity levels and all that kind of stuff in order to cure it, because the curing process is actually the most important process, in my opinion, rather than growing. I mean, growing's hard, but you can make or break your harvest with the curing process, because if you don't cure it right, all your stuff molds out. You got nothing to sell. And no one's going to want to smoke mold.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
Yeah, but
you can get sick from mold.
But we tell everybody, before it was legal, guaranteed everyone that's ever smoked weed smoked mold.
Ooh.
Guaranteed everyone that's been smoking weed for a while has smoked mold one point in time.
Okay.
Because it's just it happens so easy.
So nowadays it's more fine-tuned?
Well, nowadays, I mean, you got testing. You got to send it out to labs to get it tested, make sure that there's nothing pops up that shouldn't be there. Every state's different based on their standards of it. But I know in Washington, I mean, yeah, like as soon as you harvest a plant, when you cut it down, you have to have a set aside amount of grammage for samples to send out, because they need to test it all and make sure it passes state standards to be sold in the stores. So
states now have standards.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Ever since it became recreational, it's become a thing, which is funny because, I mean, and I don't know I know when it was medicinal only, there were standards, but it seems like the standards became more harsh and harder to get stuff through when it became recreational. And maybe it's because more people are going to be purchasing it. It's more open to the public. Maybe that's why. I don't know the reason why, but it definitely, I was in California in the transition period, when they went from medicinal only to recreational as well. And all of a sudden the testing standards became insane. Like, we're talking like parts per billion. Like, if there's just this little fraction of percentage of anything, any trace amount of anything, it's like, it's no good. You can't sell it.
So these states are really taking it serious now that it's becoming more legalized.
I would say most are, yeah. And it's a good and bad thing, because it's like, it's good for the consumer.
Yep.
It's harder on the business though. And so that's what a lot of farms and business owners were worried about, was the legalization of it being recreational everywhere, was it would affect the business. And it kind of has, because you're not guaranteed a perfect crop every time.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, even a farmer farming vegetables or whatever, you're never going to get everything perfect, but you want enough to sell to make a profit for sure. Yeah.
So, and I mean, there's times, we even when I was managing the farm, there was a time where one of our rooms caught on fire.
What?
One of our rooms caught on fire, and I remember pulling up to work that morning, and there's like four of the 5 of the gardener guys out there, and then Casey, he's the owner of the company. He was out there too, and I'm like, Casey's never here this early. Like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, I could just smell like burnt weed.
Yep.
And I was like, what's going on? I was like, something bad happened. And then I pull into the facility. They like sawzall down part of one of the warehouses where we were growing, letting smoke out. All these plants are just covered in soot. Just lost a whole room. And I don't remember exactly the number that Casey quoted me on what we lost there, but it was well over $100,000.
Jeez.
And you just take that loss because insurance doesn't cover that.
I don't think there's a marijuana insurance.
There isn't.
No.
There isn't. You can't even get loans. You can't even get a loans to start a marijuana business.
I feel like it's a high risk, high reward type business. Because like you said, there's no insurance.
Yeah.
So your marijuana farm could start on fire and you're
done.
just out of whatever it is. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, yeah, they may pay you for your facility, but they're not going to pay you for all your crops you lost and all that time you put in. And it costs a lot of money. I mean, we didn't have that big of a farm. I mean, in Washington, there's tiers. So there's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 1's going to be, I believe it's tier 1 is the top. It's based on size, so in square footage.
Okay.
So, and if you, and amount of plants and employees, and it all correlates together. But we were a tier 2, so we're right in the middle. We weren't that big, but we weren't super small. But I mean, this building, it was not that big, and the amount of energy we had to use for the watering and the lighting. I mean, pretty much 16 hours a day on your veg and 12 hours a day on your blooming plants. I mean, you're running all these like top of the line LED hood lights and stuff like that. He said our energy bill was like $50,000 a month.
Whoa!
Just to run the lights and the water bills and all that stuff.
Now you said something about you had to have special lights.
Yes.
How?
I mean, you don't have to, but there are better options. Like
okay,
LEDs were our favorites to use.
What? I'm very naive to this. What? I just figured it grew from the sunlight.
Well, so yeah, you can grow it outdoors, but so that's why people grow indoors, is because you get one harvest a year for outdoor plants.
Okay.
Because you got to go through the seasons.
Sure.
It's gonna get its natural sunlight, and it's gonna go with like, you know, the sun sets a little bit earlier usually or in the winter, and then it stays up longer in the summer. And so your plants are gonna be budding when you have a more controlled amount of sunlight time on it.
Okay.
Your bud, that's what I mean. So there's two different stages of growing. There's the veg state, where when you're growing indoors, you plant the seed or the clone or whatever, which a clone is, you basically chop off a node of a mother weed plant, a already full-grown weed plant, and you plant it into like a little cup. And then you try to grow it up a little bit, and then you transplant it into a pot, and then it becomes its own plant again. And that's honestly the healthiest way to keep genetics strong and all that kind of stuff. But when you do that, you have to veg it out. And same thing from seed. If you plant a seed, you put it in a little cup or whatever, and you germanize the seed, which is just basically getting it to sprout. And then you put it in a cup, and then once it gets big enough, you transplant it into a pot. But you have to veg it out until the plant's big enough to where you want to take it to bloom. Because if you grow a little tiny thing like this big, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Right.
So you want it to get to a good size, and then you transfer it into bloom. And so when you transfer it into bloom, you change the amount of sunlight or fake light you get.
So UV lights help that out then?
UV lights helps the germinizing process. LED lights seem just to do a little bit more faster as far as growing the sides of the buds, because so in veg you're basically just growing the plant.
Yeah.
You're not going to get any marijuana to actually form during that time. And what you do is, they say usually 16 hours of light just to pump that sunlight into the plant and get it to grow healthy. And then 8 hours of darkness. Once you go into budding, you change it up. Usually you would do like 12 hours on, 12 hours off, and give it more rest. So you blast it with some sunlight, and then you give it a lot more rest. And when it's resting is actually when the buds start to kind of grow.
So there's literally a science to this.
Yeah, they're like living organisms. It's crazy, and there is a science to it, and it's super interesting. Especially when you're around it every day. It's crazy to see. Like, you'll go in the grow room one week and see nothing, and then a week later you're like, oh my God, those things shot up, and you got these buds on there, and it's like, it just happens really fast. But it's from a day-to-day basis, you don't really notice much change, but from week to week you'll see a lot of changes. But outdoor, there's not really any of that. It's like, generally outdoor, you want to have your veg plants ready to go, and then you just plant them outside, and you're pretty much starting blooming damn near immediately. But it just takes all year long for it to develop. And I mean, outdoor plants can get much, much larger than indoor plants because of that. But it's just, for me, I personally have never worked on an outdoor farm. Okay. Everything I've ever done was indoor. I prefer indoor weed. Most people do. It has a higher price point. It's kind of...
Is it because it's controlled better to make it what you want it to be?
I think so. I think truthfully you can grow, like, because it is controlled, you can grow bigger buds, which is what everyone likes. For whatever reason, everyone just likes those big buds that weigh a half ounce.
Sure.
It's like people talk about all the time, like I bought an ounce or a half ounce and it was just one big fat nug. And it's like that. It's like, that's pretty cool. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, especially when the bigger nugs like that are more prone to mold and stuff like that.
Sure.
Because it's big and it's dense and it's filled with water.
Yeah.
And if you don't cure it right, like I was talking about, that's how the mold occurs, and then you get all these different bacterias in there, and you don't want to smoke that.
No.
So big buds that are tested right and controlled, that's what you want. But also, from my experience, it's more of a smoother smoke.
Okay.
You can get a little bit more flavor, different types of flavor profiles out of it. Usually from the outdoor I've smoked, it's a little bit more harsh. But also there's a lot of people out there that prefer outdoor weed. They feel like it
more natural, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the medical effects are better for them. It's more natural. It's from the soil, the actual soil. Because when you're going indoor, we even used it. We use nutrients. You add nutrients to it. You add, you use not normal soil. You use aftermarket soil that you can buy mixed with like this stuff it's like cocoa mix. The brand we use was called Fox Farms, which is pretty big out in California, but it's not natural necessarily completely. It's got additives and added like potassium and magnesium and your all just a bunch of different stuff, stuff that is added to it in order to promote a healthier plant. Without it, but it's not natural, and so that's why outdoor you get one harvest per year. Indoor, you can pretty much get a harvest in about 12 weeks on average.
Oh, jeez, that's
looking at like 3 months, and so that's where the money's at.
Yeah, well,
I mean, unless you have a shit ton of land and you're banking on nothing going wrong with your crop.
Yeah, because like you were just saying, it's like every quarter you're going to be able to have a whole harvest.
Exactly, and then what you do is when you do it indoor, you have 5 different rooms like we had. We had 5 different grow rooms. We'd start 1 2 weeks after the other. So every other 2 weeks we had a harvest coming down.
Okay.
And you just replant and
Sure.
So instead of getting 1 harvest a year, you're getting 20, 30 harvests a year.
Yep.
And you're just racking in the extra money. And you're just turning and burning. And like that's what we call it, turn and burn it. And as soon as we harvest a room, the gardener crews, their job was to get the room cleaned, reset, and filled by the next day.
Sure.
Because we need that room to be good in 3 more months, because that's our time frame. And so you're getting a harvest every 2 weeks. And it's not going to be as big, because if you ever look up pictures, you guys watching this can Google outdoor crops versus indoor crops. The outdoor plants are actual trees. They will look like actual trees. They're bushy, but they're a pain in the ass to work with. So much leaf. The trimming process sucks, but you will yield the most weight generally out of there. But it's just the connoisseurs like that indoor stuff. And now, if anyone knows who Burner is, I swear, ever since Burner, he's a Bay Area rapper. He's the owner of that Cookies brand. I don't know if you know Cookies.
Oh, I've heard of Cookies, yep.
Yeah, and so, Cookies is a weed now. That was his weed, and all these new exotic strains have been pretty much branched off out of those genetics. Okay. And, it takes a lot of trial and error to breed marijuana seeds. That's a science I just don't have down. But it's difficult. You got to take a male and a female, and you got to cross these 2 different types, and get them to the male to pollinate the female, and then you got to get the seeds from that, and hope that it works out. And it's just a lot of trial and error on getting these new hybrid exotic strains out there. But from what I've seen, it's just much more easier to get those grown in a controlled environment like an indoor grow.
Yep.
But it's preference really, as far as outdoor and indoor, and there's pros and cons to it. But most businesses these days are doing mostly indoor grows. I mean, there are some outdoors, and some. I mean, we actually ended up getting a greenhouse grow, which is they call that. They'll even call it greenhouse weed, like it's better than outdoor. It's pretty much outdoor, but it's a little bit more controlled than an outdoor environment, and it's cheaper.
Okay.
It's cheaper than indoor weed. Indoors weed's cheaper because the cost that goes into it, your yield isn't as high, so you got to charge a little bit more for that product. And I mean, we call it designer weed. You know what I mean? Like
Sure. Yep.
It's supposed to be the best of the best if you grow it right indoors, and you can get higher THC percentages on indoor usually, which is partly because of the size of the buds. I mean, you get these big plants. The plant has to distribute the energy to the buds, so it's like when you have these big old trees out there, I mean, it's going to spread the energy out throughout the whole plant, but you don't really see much outdoor plants crossing that 20% THC threshold, as opposed to indoor. That's kind of the norm. If you're not growing 20% indoor, like, what are you doing? That's kind of how they look at it.
Oh, so, okay. Wow.
Like, they can get up to like 30% now and stuff, which is unheard of, because back in the day when our parents or anyone's parents were smoking weed, it was like 6%. It was like,
that's a lot less than 20.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, my mom was super against weed even when I first started working in the industry. And she's like, "Oh, you guys are smoking crazy stuff now." She's like, "It's way stronger, blah, 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 blah." And eventually she came around and tried it. And now she hits her little weed pen every night before she goes to bed, and with her boyfriend, and she's all for it. She sees the medical benefits now, but it's just, that's how she was raised, and it's crazy how people are kind of coming around to it now. It is beneficial. It's not for everybody. Some people don't have the good reactions to it, but if it helps you, why not try it?
Well, that is the one thing that we talk about. It wasn't legal here in Minnesota until just literally last year. We're talking 1 year ago. So everyone still has a negative connotation on it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done it before, some people still might have that negative connotation, but you still have cigarettes out there, you still have alcohol out there,
right.
And they had the Prohibition era. I just talked about that literally a couple podcasts ago, and go off of that, people have been like, "Oh well, it was illegal back in the Prohibition era. Well, now it's back legal, so now is it okay?" And so now that it's coming around, my whole thing is, are people going to accept it? Is one of my biggest things. Are people going to accept that it's now legal? Because in every book you've ever talked to, health book, whatever, it was always illegal, negative connotation. But now they're starting to do research on these things, and there's starting to be medical benefits of these things.
Oh yeah, I mean they're totally, kind of clarifying a lot of these so-called negative effects about it. I mean, there's more, in my opinion, I think there's been more positive effects coming out about it in the recent years, probably the last 10 years or so. And honestly, I mean, I think that's why, my mom saw how much it benefited me personally. And I think that's why she gave it a shot, because she would just talk crap about it all the time. And like, "You just are getting stoned out of your mind. This stuff's so strong now. You're smoking 20%. We used to smoke 3-4%, and I didn't even like it." And I'm like, okay, well, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I'm telling you, it helps me out. Like, it just keeps me level-headed, keeps me just, keeps my mood stable, and like, as a kid, I had like anger issues and stuff like that. And when I smoke weed, man, like, you cannot get me to that point of anger. Like, it's just, and that was a big thing for me. Is like, I like being in control of my mood and not getting to that point where things affect me like that. And so, and the appetite was another thing for me, and like sleep. I've always been a horrible sleeper, but if I smoke a little bit before bed every once in a while, I'll get a fantastic night's sleep, and I won't wake up in the middle of the night, which I usually do.
Okay.
So there's just a lot of benefits for me personally, but everyone's got their own reasons why they do it, whether you just like the recreation of it or if there's actually a medical benefit for you. But for my mom, my mom's got worse anxiety than me. And I told her, I was like, "I'm telling you, you're smoking the wrong stuff. Like, let me use my knowledge and help you. Like, you need this strain, you need this. Yeah. And as soon as she listened to me, she's like, "You were right. It's like, you were right. Me and Todd have been getting the best sleeps of our life.
Sure.
And I'm like, I told you. I was like, I'm not I'm not just bullshitting. Like, there is real benefits to it, and I'm sure there's negative effects, but the amount that they've made it out to be in before any sort of legalization is just, I want to see where all that information came from, where that research came from, because they obviously weren't testing the right things, because it's proven that there's more benefits coming out than negative effects with it. Yeah. And so, like you said, will people accept it? It's just only time will tell. And I think it's one of those things. It's just, it takes time, because like I said, with my mom, like, my mom's the older generation before us, and people out on the West Coast, almost everybody, I swear, just like everyone my mom's age is pretty much doing edibles. Like, they're doing some sort of recreational weed now.
Sure.
Like, you're kind of the oddball if you don't, from what I've seen now. But it wasn't like that initially. When I first got my medical card, it still wasn't like that. People are still like, "Oh, you got your medical card? You don't think Jobs are gonna look that up when you apply?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think they're going to."
Well, they're not. Well, if it's medical related, they're not supposed to.
Right. Which, they're not supposed to. But that's like, everyone was always afraid about that, and like, sure, "Oh, you're gonna be in this database." And like, I remember people, "You're in this database forever now." And I'm like, "Okay, cool," because it's gonna be legal. Like, and I knew it. And but yeah, so like, that older generation, they're coming around out on the West Coast now, and it's slowly starting to spread this way.
Yes, it is.
And now it's so it's going to take a few years, I think, before people are finally like everyone's going to be accepting of it.
Yeah.
You may still not try it, but you're not going to be. It's not going to be frowned upon in a few years, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, as we're starting to wind down here, I have a question for you that I've been sitting here thinking about. What do you think one of the biggest misconceptions of marijuana is for people, or people that are against it? What do you think is like, just they don't understand it? This is why they have this problem with it. I don't know.
Just so that it's classified as a hard drug.
Sure.
Because it's just not. I mean, anyone who's ever smoked it will tell you it's not a hard drug, and anyone who's ever done a hard drug will tell you weed is nothing like that. I mean, you drink alcohol and you get a hangover.
Yep.
If you drink too much of it. I've never heard of anyone the next day after smoking an ounce of weed being like, "Oh man, I feel like shit."
Yeah.
There's literally, it's the one thing that I think has very minimal side effects to it for me, besides getting paranoid and stuff like that. But also the fact that there's no withdrawals. You can smoke it for a week and not have any, and
sure,
you're not going to feel weird.
Yeah. I mean, some people don't understand. A drug is classified as something that physically or psychologically messes with you, and that means alcohol is a drug, that means tobacco is a drug, and that means caffeine's a drug.
Right.
Well, caffeine's in not literally, but a lot of things that we consume.
It's in every store.
Yeah. It's pop. It's in energy drinks. It's in chocolate. So a lot of things have caffeine in it that people don't realize, and that's actually considered a drug as well. And I teach my students that. I go, I'm teaching you about alcohol and the negative side effects of that, and also tobacco, but also don't forget, caffeine is also a drug, but it is a legal drug. Not that tobacco is not legal or alcohol is not legal. It's just depending on how much you're consuming of it.
Right.
But you can have as much caffeine as you want, and you got pulled over by the cops. They're not going to be like,
right.
You're going to jail for too much caffeine.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah.
I never actually even thought about that, the caffeine aspect. Because, I mean, it's like, where's the, I mean, I've had too much caffeine before.
Working out, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you feel sick and you feel like you're like dizzy and stuff or whatever.
People get headaches from not having enough.
Yeah, and that too. Which that's what's crazy about weed is like you won't get headaches.
Yeah.
If you're someone who smokes all the time and you go a day without smoking, you're not gonna. You can still function on your day-to-day basis, and you're not gonna get a headache. You're not gonna be wanting to throw up. You're not gonna be getting stomach cramps or sweating or any weird stuff like that. Which alcohol. If you go hard and binge the night before, it's like it's like the hair of the dog thing. It's like it's almost like, I mean, they actually say the withdrawal is from the lack of alcohol for your body, because you've been drinking so hard, your body's like, whoa, I need to fill this void back up.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And so it's like there's nothing like that for weed. And so that's what's crazy to me, that it's been classified as like, you know, whatever scheduled drug it is in the government. It's just, it doesn't make sense, because I guess it's been called a drug for so long that it's hard to say it's not. But I mean, everything's a drug. Prescriptions are drugs.
Opiates.
Like,
yep.
yeah, I mean, like, it's called a drug store. You go to the drugstore and you buy drugs, allergy medicines, like everything.
Prescriptions, yes.
Yeah, so it's like, it is, in my mind, a prescription drug, but it has very, very minimal effect as far as like being looked at as a drug, because, yeah, opiates, alcohol, cocaine, meth, like all that kind of stuff, you're going to have some sort of negative effect if you abruptly stop using it.
Sure.
And with weed, that's just not the case. And that's the big difference with it that I don't think a lot of people understand. And at the same time, it just doesn't alter your mind to a state where you're not in control of yourself. Like, if anything, you are more aware of your surroundings. You're more just observing more than you normally would. And I actually, when I was in college, I got an MIP, and I had to do this drug and alcohol class. And I'll never forget this, because it's to this day the truest thing I've ever heard any like drug and alcohol counselor say. He said, I shouldn't even tell you guys this. He's like, but don't drink and drive. He's like, that's the worst thing you could fucking possibly do. But he's like, I personally wouldn't give a shit if you guys were smoking weed and driving. He's like, the worst thing you're going to do being high and driving is go 10 miles under the speed limit and make sure you're inside the fucking lanes. And it's the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
you will not break a law under the influence of, like, if it's just strictly weed, you're not going to just go out and break a law and be a criminal. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to be more conscious of what you're doing and like rethink everything you're doing if it's just weed. Yeah. Now, if you add alcohol into the mix, then things can go bad. But I want to see statistics with, you know, only weed in the system, someone who committed a crime. Like, it's just, I guarantee it's very, very low, because that's the last thing on your mind if you're smoking weed, in my opinion. And that's where I don't think it should be classified as a drug. I mean, it is, but it's just, I don't want to say harmless, but to everyone who thinks negatively about it, it truthfully is pretty harmless in comparison to most things. Sure. So, yeah, it's just, everyone's got their viewpoint on it already, but. And it's hard to change minds.
It is, because it's been illegal for so long. Right. You're right. I mean, Prohibition era, it lasted for like a decade or so. Marijuana has been illegal since before I was born.
It's been a while.
And so I understand where people are coming from. Like, it's hard to change old minds to saying, hey, you know, now it's fine. Yeah. And Minnesota literally has it legal. Not saying it's fine. I'm just saying it's been legal, not like, just like alcohol. Alcohol is legal to a certain extent.
Right.
You know,
right.
Like, you can drink as much as you want at your house. That can be great for your health, but you can't go and drink and drive. Right. So that's the one thing with marijuana. Same thing, like 2023 August came out, said, hey, 2 ounces or less, you're good with. So, I mean, people just got to come to acceptance with these types of things that are happening. Things are changing. Laws are changing. They do every single year. This is a major one. I think that for Minnesota, this is a major one. Maybe not so much for California. Yeah. Since in 1996, they already had medical usage. Fine. I mean, you're talking 2 decades ago almost now for California. Damn, yeah. So they're like, yeah, old news for us. It's been 2 decades ago.
Pretty much.
Minnesota's like, what's going on now?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's going to take some time for them to come around.
It sure will. Yeah.
They'll realize it, though. I mean, it's just statistics speak for themselves, and then when you're around it more, and you're around people who do it, and then you're like, okay, well, this guy's a good guy still, and he smokes a little weed or whatever. It's like, not everybody that does it is a criminal, and it doesn't make you a criminal.
No.
Just like, I mean, I feel like plenty more of criminal activity happens when people are out at the bars just drinking.
I see a lot of domestic violence.
Exactly. So
I
it's
see
like
a lot of that going on.
it doesn't affect your inhibitions the way alcohol does.
Yeah.
If anything, it makes you more aware of the consequences of things, in my opinion. I feel like it helps you look into things at a deeper level than you normally would. Just normal. I don't know. It's hard to explain. If you've never done it, it's hard to explain, but that's just how I look at it.
Sure.
It's just like you look at things a little bit more in depth than you normally would. And sometimes it's like a beautiful thing. Like it's like for instance, like one of my favorite things to do when it's nice out was just go roll up a joint, go out on my kayak and go fishing. And the nature was like just enhanced by 5 times. Like, just I'm looking at these. I'll catch myself just staring at trees and like, oh my god, like, I wonder how these trees, how long ago these trees were planted and how old they are. And it's just like that's not something I normally am just gonna like look at and like think about. But I mean, fishing's a low key activity and you got time to think and stuff, but it's like that with anything. You just go on a run or something. Like I know people who will smoke before the gym and they swear that it just and I actually have I've done. I don't prefer it because I do kind of feel like I'm a little bit too relaxed when I smoke to be working out. I like to kind of be amped up a little bit, but I've felt it. The mind muscle connection when you're working out a specific muscle group and you're high and you smoked weed before the gym, it's almost like you can like see your muscle working. It's like you're so in tune with like I can feel that I'm working this muscle perfectly right now.
Sure.
Rather than just going to the gym and like, oh, I think I'm just kind of muscling stuff up. I'm not really isolating anything.
Yeah.
But like if you're working a specific muscle group out, I swear that it's like, for me, I feel like I can like see the inside of my body when I'm working out. I can just like feel it that much better. And it sounds crazy to say, but it's a real thing. And a lot of my friends just won't work out without smoking now. They're just like, dude, like I just enjoy it. Like it's just nice. And then you're not rushing. You don't rush your workouts. You're content being there. You're just there's a lot. I can go on and on about the benefits of it. But
I know. I can tell you could, dude. I can tell.
And well, it's crazy. Since I moved out here, I don't even really smoke that much anymore. I mean,
okay. It hasn't been really legal for that long. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's harder to get out here, and there's there's not. They got the. I think the only shops you can really get out here in Minnesota is what they call Delta 9, and it's like. Same family. I truthfully don't know a lot about Delta 9, but I know that it's like, it is cannabis, but it's like a different variation of it. It's milder. It's not supposed to really give you like that full body effect. It's kind of just like a buzz or something. They say it's like really mild.
Yeah, we do have those around here too.
Yeah, and so like, I'm not
that.
really a fan of it. I'm like, I'd rather just kind of have the real thing. Like I don't really need like that buzz that they talk about.
Sure.
But I don't really see a whole lot of medical benefits with that one. But that seems to be easier to obtain. Like when I went to Nashville, that's pretty much what you would find. You could go with, if you had a medical card, there's a few places you can go to get like legit THC, but Delta 9 THC, which is different, you could get at a smoke shop.
Yep.
So, and that's kind of where it weirded me out. I'm like, what are we smoking here? Like spice? Like, like
it's oregano.
Yeah. Like, well, have you heard of spice? Like that K2, the synthetic marijuana?
Okay. Oh, dude. There's been people that made synthetic marijuana around here.
That's no good, dude.
No.
It's no good. It's made horribly. And they were selling that legally at smoke shops forever. And it got banned pretty quick, but like, yeah. I mean, one of my buddies I grew up with, his mom was drug testing him, and so he couldn't smoke with us. And he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna smoke spice then." So we'd go to the smoke shop every day and buy a little little bag of spice, and it literally says on the bag, "This is potpourri, not for human consumption." And if you ever watch a documentary about it, it's literally not controlled. People just they blend these herbs together, just mix them all together, and they spray it with this chemical, and it's not controlled in any way, shape, or form. One part of it could be sprayed harsher than the other and have some crazy effects. I mean, like, honestly, I think the spice is bath salts or spice or both were the ones that were the people were eating faces and stuff like that.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like, you don't want to smoke that stuff, but people were smoking that legally, able to go to the smoke shop, but you had to have a medical card to go get weed. And it's like, this stuff, when my friend was smoking this stuff for like a month when his mom was drug testing him, we called him Spicy J because his name was Jake. We called him Spicy J because every time he would go smoke it, he'd have to smoke like every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes, and it was like you were like looking right through him. His eyes were just he wouldn't even like look at you. It was like you could just see right through him, or he was looking right through you, and he was just not the same person.
Jeez.
And he smoked with me for a long time, and I've never seen him like that smoking weed. And when he was on the spice or whatever, the K2, the K2 as they call it, Kodak Black calls it the K2.
Oh yeah.
Or in jail, I guess they call it clone. I've been watching 60 Days In, and they call it clone. It's just, yeah, it's all bad, but it's legal. So it's crazy.
Well, dude, I appreciate you coming out here. You shed so much light on this whole situation because in Minnesota, to us, marijuana is brand new.
Yeah.
And for where you're from, California, 96 is when it became medically okay.
Right.
And so you're like, to you, this is just no big deal.
Yeah.
But to people in Minnesota that are probably listening to this right now, this is a kind of a big deal. Like, oh my gosh, what are the differences? You just shined a whole new light for me on everything that we just talked about, because I don't know that much about it because I don't smoke marijuana.
Right.
So I don't know anything about that. So everything you just taught us was amazing. You literally did 1 hour, not even trying.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to talk about, man.
Yeah.
I'm knowledgeable about it because I care about it, and it's helped me personally.
Sure.
So that's why, I'm a big advocate for it, but by no means do I want to push anybody or say, like that's the right outlook on it to anybody, but that's just my viewpoint. And, I talked about like that guy, the counselor or whatever, saying, I wouldn't even care if you guys drive. Like, I don't promote that. I don't think anyone should be driving on weed or anything like that. But I do think people should be a little bit more open-minded about it. And I think it will come. It's nothing you could rush.
Sure.
It's going to come with time, just because, like you said, 96 out in the West Coast, it's starting to move this way.
And it's 2023.
It took my mom. I mean, my mom is 60 years old now, and I mean, it took her years to even become open to the thought of even trying it.
Yep.
I mean, she was firmly against it, but now she sees what I meant all these years when I was telling her. I'm like, it's not even that bad. It's really not. And if you're someone like you just got to do the research for yourself.
Yep.
Just do the research for yourself. See if it's something that would benefit you. If you're thinking about trying it. If not, just don't worry about it. It's not, live your normal life, but don't look down upon people who partake or recreationally. It's just like drinking. It's just like anything else. And from my personal experiences, I have friends that don't drink anymore, but because they prefer just to smoke weed. They're just like, I much would rather just smoke weed and not have my mind altered in that way, the way that alcohol does, because they know the difference. And it really doesn't affect you in a negative way that the media has made it out to be in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the negative looks at it have come from, is the media, which the media does that. But until you try it for yourself, it's like, just live with it, roll with the punches. Like it's not gonna kill anybody. It's not gonna kill you. I don't think there's been any deaths ever from weed.
Yeah, I heard that too.
There's literally been 0 deaths. You can't overdose on it. I think there's a mark that they said you would have to smoke like pounds and pounds and pounds within 30 minutes or something
Well,
like that, which is impossible.
Yeah, you're only smoking grams, it sounds like.
Yeah, so
At best. So grams are a lot less than pounds. But as we're finishing up, is there any final words you'd like to leave with anybody out there, or have you touched on just about everything you thought you'd touch on?
I'm sure there'll be more stuff that comes to me later.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll have to just do another one, I guess. But
that's okay. I mean, we're at an hour and 50 right now, so man, we're at a long ways.
Yeah, but I pretty much covered on everything. I mean, I can get into more detail about like how to grow and stuff and what to look for with that, which that's probably for another podcast. But
probably because I love that you came on here and talked about what it takes to do this, and even the misconceptions about it. That was a great thing, because in Minnesota, like I was saying, we are so far away from what we know from California from 1986.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, we are 2 decades behind, it seems like, legally. Yeah. And so some people get that negative connotation, like I said. Oh my gosh, marijuana bad because the legislature or the state law said it's bad.
Right.
And alcohol's fine, caffeine's fine, tobacco's fine. Marijuana bad. So I like that you came out and touched about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, and I like that too. I mean, it's important for everyone to know that like it's really not as bad as it seems. And another thing that I actually didn't mention is, compared to the West Coast, I swear, coming out here, many more people use some sort of tobacco product or drink more frequently than people do on the West Coast. And it's not just because, everyone's just sober on the West Coast, but I think it's because the use of marijuana has gone up on the West Coast, and people have found that to just be better for their daily lives rather than, waking up feeling like shit the next day. Sure. I mean, tobacco, I've been using tobacco and nicotine and stuff like that for a long time, but as far as alcohol goes, it's like, you go home and you have a drink, but other people will just go home and, smoke a joint or smoke a little bowl of weed. And that's their thing, and I guarantee you the person that smokes weed wakes up feeling a lot better than the person that had the drink the night before.
Sure.
Because I've done both. Sometimes I do both.
All right.
And I wish I didn't drink because, it's like, so I have noticed that, and I think it'll change. I mean, as it becomes more accepted, more and more people are going to find everyone's got a vice. Yep. Some people are going to find, you know what? This actually does work better for me than something else or whatever. So, some people take sleeping pills, and I don't even think sleeping pills are that great. Sleeping pills make me feel like crap and groggy the next morning.
As long as you got enough sleep the next day, you're fine. If not, I've taken melatonin, and if I don't get 8+ hours, I'm just dogging the next day for a while. So, dude, I appreciate you coming on here on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You've really shed a lot of light on a bunch of different things. But we're glad to have you here in Winona, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're enjoying your first 7 months here.
Yeah, it's coming up on a year soon.
And hopefully the summer gets a little better for you, so you can, because we gotta get the river together. We gotta get the river. And I've only been on the river twice because the river is crazy high right now. Yeah. But we want you to come out on the river and enjoy a day of sandbars, fun, and sun. But this has been great. I want to cheers you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Will.
And for those who are listening, you can watch this literally on YouTube, or if you want to listen to this, any major streaming platform that has podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon. I'm on all those platforms. But this has been another edition of Brews Cruise, and I am out with Tyler Weber. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Thank you.